fact that India has comprehensively decimated military and airbase installations of Pakistan, there is still a debate that is raging in the Western media on who really is a victor in this war called Operation Sindoor. Joining me tonight is John Spencer, the Chief of Modern Warfare, joining us live. He is somebody who studies this entire issue very closely and is an authority. Thanks very much for speaking to me, John Spencer. You've closely observed global conflicts and urban military campaigns. What specifically drew your attention to India's Operation Sindoor, and why do you view it as a model of strategic clarity in an age of ambiguous, open-ended warfare?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I do study war all around the world, and I actually go to war zones from Ukraine to Gaza. I was actually even in Mumbai in 2019 studying the 2008 Mumbai attacks. Operation Sindoor is very unique for me as a teacher and student of war, as in after an awful terrorist attack, India responded immediately with strategic clarity on what their goals was, striking 9 terrorist sites, so very discriminately, but also very overwhelming against terrorist infrastructure for the terrorists that had launched attack on Indian soil, killing Indian civilians. And that started Operation Sindoor, which was very unique in the immediate and clear message that operation started. But then the Pakistan military, which we all know that they fund and resource the terrorists, but the Pakistan military attacked India with drones and wasn't able to hit any of the Indian military and civilian sites they were targeting because of India's overwhelming air defense capabilities. India then responded against military sites in Pakistan at will with basically 100% success, very discriminately targeting the objectives, and through this process achieved strategic goals in a matter of 4 days. And I wrote this in a few articles I've been writing lately, which is very unique in modern warfare to achieve strategic goals so quickly but also so clearly. And this is where I push back against others that say that India should have gone farther. India basically established deterrence, as in showed overwhelming military superiority to be able to hit terrorists and the Pakistan military when they wanted to escalate with no hesitation and with immense capability, but also defend their Indian soil incredibly and establish a new doctrine, especially for me looking at India's past operations where after an attack, India might pursue other political, especially after the Mumbai attacks because of the time it was. This established a new Indian doctrine, as in India will no longer take terrorist attacks against its soil and then be threatened by the nuclear saber, which is very reckless of a nation to do, is to threaten nuclear escalation. So India established a new doctrine showing that it would use force only when necessary, achieve deterrence, demonstrate strategic independence from the world, as in India will defend India when required, but also establish a new red line, as in no longer will we allow terrorist attacks and then seek first a diplomatic means. We will immediately respond through very controlled and precise operations. So I think it's a clear, objective, overwhelming, decisive victory for India to achieve strategic goals that are very constrained, but also send a very clear message on multiple objectives.
It's coincidental that you mentioned 26/11 and India's response at that time and the new doctrine at this time, because that is the subject of a huge political debate within India. But you said that after just 4 days of calibrated military action, it is objectively conclusive. India has achieved a massive victory. Operation Sindoor met and exceeded its strategic aims, destroying terrorist infrastructure. Also, you've emphasized that this was not symbolic the strikes that were done, but decisive power clearly applied in your strategic analysis. How important is political clarity and leadership resolve in achieving such decisive results in modern warfare? I want to ask you, are these factors being tested against other wars around the world?
It is refreshing and unique. One is that war is the pursuit of political goals, right? So, of course, militaries will say these are the military goals, we're going to achieve these, but war in a nation, especially a free nation, democratic nation, the political leadership sets the goal and then adapts it as the situation evolves with the best military advice, and that's what you saw here. So just an immense amount of clarity in responding to an attack immediately, demonstrating military superiority, but also clarity immediately from the political leadership of this is what we did, this is why we did it, here's our goal, and for now, we've achieved that goal. We've established deterrence, we've set a new red line, as in this is our strategic position, and it demonstrated independence on, look, we will respond immediately, but we're also not going to take it beyond these limited goals, which is what we call unlimited warfare, right? So invasions and things like that, there starts to become political incoherence on what the goal is and what the ways and ends are, basically the capabilities that you apply toward. So I think it's a very clear, especially in a world where there are these kind of what people call unclear objectives and how to achieve the goal in a war. I don't like the term forever wars, but that's there as well. This was a very limited operation with very clear political goals that were achieved in an immensely quick amount of time.
Well, let me also ask you, Mr. Spencer. Operation Sindoor was conducted under the looming risk of nuclear escalation. How does this operation redefine the theory of limited war under nuclear deterrence, particularly in the context of South Asia's unique dynamics between two nuclear-armed neighbors? I'm asking this question because in an interview to me just 2 days ago, renowned combat historian Tom Cooper geo-confirmed that India had targeted the entrances of a nuclear weapons storage center in Pakistan. He stated that there is a video clearly showing hits on the entrances, on both entrances of this nuclear storage site close to the Sargodha Air Base, which means there has been some confirmation. In this case, how do you think this confirmation is going to impact the situation?
I did see that. I don't know if that's fully confirmed. I will say that this was the concern, right? Everybody's always concerned about staying below that threshold. And the evolution of nuclear deterrence as well, as in non-proliferation and things like that. This is a very great example of how a nation, a nuclear-armed nation, can respond in a limited operation to an attack that isn't threatening the existence of another nation that has nuclear weapons. So India demonstrated, and there'll be more clarity, I guess, on that report, but India overwhelmingly, undeniably demonstrated the capability to strike in Pakistan at any site it wants to, but also showed constraint that this isn't a maximalist goal of regime change or threatening a nation, which is, in my opinion, the only reason anybody should ever consider nuclear weapon is when their entire nation is under attack and threat of not surviving, right? So nations have strategic interests, and the number one is survival. And a nuclear-armed nation, that's what that's for. India demonstrated a capability, but kept it below that escalation that nobody in the world wants to see. But I also strongly believe we've had many years of what we call kind of the fear of nuclear war, right? So mutually assured destruction, things like that. That has allowed people to violate the laws of war, international norms, sovereign borders, everything like that. And India showed what strategic clarity looks like, even with nuclear capabilities of, look, I'm not threatening anybody's survival, but I will respond to attack and very limited with very clear goals, which is really a global issue.
Absolutely. It was the survival of Indian citizens that was being threatened, and this is the least that India needed to do. You also described India's response as not vengeance but deterrence. How critical is the balance between restraint and retaliation in establishing modern deterrence postures, and did Operation Sindoor establish a credible long-term threshold for state-sponsored terrorism?
So it's a great question, and I do believe that India responded not in vengeance. Of course, people want attribution and justice, but a nation, especially which we have to really point out, a democratic, free society nation, the goal is to use just war, executed justly within the laws of war. All of the global international norms to respond to attack, and India showed that. So it showed that it needed to reestablish deterrence, send a clear message, and it did that. Your second question, though, is really tough. As did this deter Pakistan and other terror-backing regimes of the world from continuing to deploy terrorists through a proxy war, although if there's direct attribution, it's not proxy, you're doing it. That's a bigger, we have to wait and see. India definitely established deterrence. It showed overwhelming military superiority and political clarity, as in the will to respond to attacks and say that the old way of doing things is over. This is the new way of doing things. We will hold the terror backers accountable, but now we get the other side gets a chance to change their ways. Like you said, even in what Pakistan does to support terrorism, which has been doing for decades, now it gets to make a decision while India establishes its clear national policy.
Well, India has deliberately called for halt of this operation, as Prime Minister Modi has also highlighted that this is a halt. You also have highlighted that the strategic intent behind this is extremely vital. But how vital is this semantic signaling in modern conflict to adversaries, allies, and the global diplomatic community? Because we've not ended it, we've halted it, we are testing our neighbors. What is the message that we are doing and giving to the world?
It's vital. It can be so the basically information operation, right? So these statements, to include by the political leadership, which you have the clarity, are vital in modern conflicts, because you can win every battle but lose a war because of the narrative, right? And this is what we've seen Pakistan attempt to do, is try to reshape the narrative about what happened to its sites, what it did to India, whether it downed 6 aircraft, all this misinformation. That messaging by what they are targeting and why they are allowing for a cease in responses is all vital in global legitimacy, but also in clarity to Indian population, to the Indian military. It's so critical to do and really hard to achieve in this world we live in, which is a world of misinformation, where you can use social media and a bunch of journalists and things to try to reshape the narrative. So that's another demonstration of Indian superiority in this war, was how clear its messages. Even the military press conference from the military leaders on exactly what happened and why, but showing political control of the military. In a modern war, that's the level of information output and clarity that is needed.
Well, clearly this is a war that has seen a doctrine shift as far as India is concerned. India will no longer tolerate export of terror from Pakistan, and the retaliation, the retribution will follow. We've suspended Operation Sindoor. We've not ended it. That's the message to the world and to Pakistan. And India has also decided that nuclear blackmail is not going to work with it. And even if India is alone in its battle with terrorism, with its war on terrorism, it is willing to do this alone. It does not need any crutches, any props from the world. Thank you very much, John Spencer, for joining me on Times Now. And thank you very much for calling this a victory, a comprehensive victory for India.